I would like to welcome Caroline. Welcome to the call.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's funny to see you talking. I'm used to hearing you on the phone. So
I know, right?
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into this because we've been working together, like we talked before we went live today, and we're over a year and a half of work. And we've done a lot of work over that year and a half.
Yes.
We've done a lot of sessions together.
Yes.
And I appreciate you as a client. I appreciate your willingness to put yourself out there and your constant work. No matter what, we've had some successes and some struggling pieces.
Yeah.
But whatever we've had along the way, what I always admire about you is you just don't give up and you're going to keep moving. So let's take people back, about a year and a half when you came to me. Just give them a little snapshot of kind of like, where were you in your business? What were you up to? And what made you come and realize okay, I need someone like Jeff?
Yeah. So a year and a half ago, 5 years ago, I was certified as a coach. And for a long time, I was working in another industry in production, which is really intense, long hours. And I had really wanted to be working just on coaching because it's actually what makes me happy. And I just couldn't figure out how to do that. And I moved and life seemed chaotic. And when I sort of came out at the other end of the wormhole, I said, I don't want to do any more production work. I just want to be a full-time coach. And so I had been reading about that and, reading books and talking to people who had made that transition. And somebody who I admire a lot from my days at IPEC in coaching school, someone I admire very much is Jen Barley. And I mentioned to her what I was wanting to do, and Jeff's name came up. Your name came up, and she said, call Jeff and talk to him. So I did immediately, so that you can help me with this transition. So we spoke that first day about what my goals were, and then I signed up to jump right in the deep end with you. So that's where I was.
Yeah. So talk about, because a lot of coaches that will listen to this, they're in that spot of where they're starting their business, they're thinking of it, or maybe they're in it a little bit there. So talk about kind of the place you are in emotionally. Like, what were you frustrated with? What were you needing help with?
Yeah.
Understanding those things are important.
Totally. First, I was terrified because anytime you make a job transition like that, there's a lot of fear around the money. Is the money going to come? Are you going to be able to keep up your lifestyle, support your family, all that stuff? So that was really scary. And I was also feeling incredibly overwhelmed about all the processes that you need to build on the back end. So I personally love to coach and I love to talk to people. I don't love setting up websites and marketing emails and all that stuff. I was just feeling so lost in the sauce. And Jeff really broke that down for me and gave me bite-sized pieces on a weekly basis that I could chew on and, tasks that I could accomplish without feeling so terrified. And I could ask you the stupid questions like, what does this mean on Facebook? Or, do I need to sign up for Twitter to support my business? So you really helped break that down for me. And I've been able to set up a lot of back-end systems that you recommended. I got my website up and I've got Aweber working for my marketing materials and my email communication. I have, I'm just about to start doing some interviews on my own website. So you recommended some things for me to look at, like this system, which is very cool. But it's just been so helpful taking the fear out of all the back end stuff.
Yeah, and I know that was a big thing for you. Is there's so many people in different spots, and some people are fine with some back end things or internet or computer stuff, and then some people are like, help me through this, And I feel like that's an important aspect to it all. Is wherever coaches are right now, if they're feeling overwhelmed with things, is like they don't have to do it by themselves, right? It doesn't matter with me or somebody else, or they can find something on the internet, but it's like you need to have some structure to your business, and I feel like that's where you got some of that structure, which started to allow it to move you forward.
A lot of structure. I mean, it wasn't just the systems that you gave me, you know, the actual applications and software suggestions. It was, you know, how to build your weekly communication plan. How are you going to communicate with your audience? How many times a week do you reach out? You know, what should the conversation be that you're having in email? Like, I'm about to launch a Facebook Live. Get ready for the Facebook Live. And now here I've done it, and now you can watch it. So I wouldn't have known to do that if you hadn't set the example for me. So that's been everything.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that and setting up some of the structure, not only the back end stuff, but, you know, the email systems, you know, doing some of those live events, because you've done a bunch of videos as well, and with your website, like, what have you seen as a result of that in terms of like, what have you learned through that process?
Through the process of building the stuff, you mean, or?
Yeah, building it, but then executing it, you know, so especially with your message, because I think that's one of the biggest things is where we helped you kind of really narrow it down and figure out, like, you kind of knew who you were helping, but it's just like, how do you begin to articulate that, and how do you begin to market that? And so I'm just wondering how, you know, through the videos that you've done or the emails you've had to write or things like that, how has that helped you refine your message and really, you know, target it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, once I had my website up and running, I felt legit. I felt so much better just having that up so that people could look to my site, find me, see what I was about. And I wasn't just sort of skulking around. I felt like I had a landing page where people could see that I had a legitimate business. In terms of, you know, the communication that I do with people, there was one thing that you said to me that has really stuck, because in the beginning I was really having a hard time with what do I want to say to people on a weekly basis, whether it's an email or in a video. And you said, well, you're working with moms. You are a mom. Talk to them about a topic that's relevant to your daily grind, your struggle, your challenges. And that makes you more approachable. And so now, like clockwork on Mondays, except yesterday, I post a question to my group that invites them into the conversation. And it's usually about a struggle that's totally relatable. And for me, it's something totally authentic. Like, what do you do when your 11-year-old won't wake up on time, or, you know, something silly like that? But it draws the people who I want to be my clients into the conversation because they have a shared experience. Yeah.
And that's the biggest piece, especially a lot of people have that fear of, like, what do I talk about? So you just got to come from the place that you're at. And a lot of times, like you know, helping the women, the professional moms, you know, who feel overwhelmed with work and life and motherhood. It's that from coming from that relatable place, that's what they're going to resonate with the most.
Right.
Absolutely. So now we get into the business, and now we get into what I've had the great experience of working with you is, especially over the last year and a half, is we've been in the trenches, right? So, you know, you can get some specifics, but like, talk about some of the trenches. I mean, the stuff you've done with the corporate things, the events you've put on and tried to keep going and trying to expand. Like, talk about whatever you feel what resonates to talk about now. So the coaches start to see like what it's like when we go into the trenches and do the real work.
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing to me in the trenches has been that I started out with one business image in mind. And I think things have evolved for me. So I work with working moms and helping them find balance in life. And I had set out to have private clients, and I built a website for private clients and worked really hard to try to get them. But, you know, that can often be a revolving door, which is difficult. People buy packages, and if you've helped them, then they're off on their own, which is what you want in some respects, right? Of course, we want the client, but we want them to succeed too.
Yeah.
But I realized after doing that for a while, and trying to find the clients, I was hosting local events. I started a new moms group in my town. I I put on Mommy and Me events to draw people in. We had events at the Cycle Bar. I had a group at the library on a weekly basis, which was like a Mommy and Me play date. And I had people coming in every week to speak to the moms about something that was relevant to them, whether it was breastfeeding or how to take the best photos of your small moving children with your iPhone. You know, I had a photographer come in. I was really trying very hard to build up the group. And I was getting a little frustrated, you know, talk about the trenches, really frustrated because it was slow going. And it occurred to me that it might make more sense to want a sort of 60-40 split in my life. So I decided to go after private clients for 40% of my time and corporate clients for 60% of my time, because that way, if I could get on a retainer, I was always sure that I would have like a certain amount of income coming in on an annual basis. And for me, that was important. So that was surprising to me, though, how that went. I've always sort of stayed away from the corporate world. I'm not interested in corporate coaching. And yet going to corporate clients has been good for me. So I'm going to continue to work on building these two different sides of my business. I'm about to revamp my website to reflect the new audience, but I wouldn't have guessed that I would have gone in this direction. So I've learned a lot.
Yeah. When we talk about what you've learned, right?
Yeah.
You know, doing those events, and it's good to hear you talk about all the things you've done, because it's as I'm sitting here, I'm like, she has done a lot of stuff. You know, like obviously when you're working through it, you know, week after week, month after month,
Yeah.
with a lot of stuff you don't realize, like, but when you kind of pack it all into sentences, you're like, yeah, she has done a lot of things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you've learned, you know, and I don't want to harp on the frustrations, but like these are some of the real things. Like we could talk about successes, but like trying to get people together for events, you know, the communications, like you've reached out to some big companies, like really name companies, if you will, you know, to create relationships. Talk about some of those experiences a little bit.
You know, you have to be a really good read of your audience and who you're going after. And I think what you think is going to work because you want it to work as a coach doesn't necessarily fly. And you have to take the cues from the people that you're going after and sort of bend to them a little bit. So, you know, in my town, I have this new moms group. It's been really challenging. Week after week, you know, the number of people who were showing up was dwindling, or sometimes I'd have a bigger group. Sometimes it was almost nobody. I wanted to give up. Jeff said, keep going. And I did, but I feel like I've really had to change course on that, because what I thought that they needed so much, they were very hesitant to participate in. So I've been rethinking that group and what to do with them. And I'm trying to read what their needs are outside of what I want to do, but what would serve them best and still allow me to coach. And in the corporate space, you really have to understand how they work, and you have to play their game a little bit in terms of what to offer, when to offer it, when to follow up, how much is too much. You know, you've guided me on a lot of that stuff. It's hard to read sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing, is it is hard to read, and sometimes we're not sure what to do. But at the end of the day, like it's the persistence and the consistency that you've had. And even when you get to that point where you come back and you're like, oh, I'm so frustrated, and it's one of those spaces, like we talk it out, but then it's just, well, it's always remembering a lot of the times is, you know, they're not always, and most likely never, on the same timetable that we're on.
Never.
You know?
Never.
And then the next thing you know, it's like we're like, oh, we're done with this whole thing, and we're frustrated. And next thing you know, it's like the next week we get a call back or we get an email.
Yeah.
And it might still not be what we want to hear, or it might not be moving as fast for them as we want it to be, for us as we want it to be. But it's like, okay, well, we are still on their radar. It just.
Yeah. It's really hard because when you're building a business, you feel so codependent on other people's responses to you. And so I just feel like in any given week, I just need one positive response. I need somebody to acknowledge what I'm doing or respond to me or sign up or whatever. And sometimes we sit here like, oh my God, I'm such a loser. It's not happening. But you just need that one that really helps you keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do this because this is important. We talked about this a little bit before, but when you came to me a year and a half ago, you had quit your job. You're like, I'm done with like that. I'm going to do this thing. And I remember in the beginning, it was part of it was like, we've got to be conscientious for our finances because we don't want to like dig a hole debt wise in order to do this because as we know, business takes time. And so as of recent, probably in the last 3 months, maybe, we get to that place where it's like, all right, we're moving our business along, but we realize like, okay, we need to get a side hustle, right? We need to get another contract with your other job so that you can get some income.
Yes.
So that so the business isn't being stressed because, I need to earn money as a result of this. Talk about that a little bit because like, as we said before, a lot of people, they're like, I'm just going to quit my job. Or if I end up quitting my job and then I have to get another job afterwards, I feel like I failed or I feel like I didn't do well. But it's like, no, it's not that at all. It's just like you're being smart. So talk about that a little bit of what you went through, to realize, okay, here, I've got to get this and why I'm doing it and how it's helping you with where you're at in your business right now.
Yeah. So I think as we discussed before, I think there's a lot of shame that anybody feels in starting a business when it doesn't take off right away or you're building it incrementally and it's just slower than you would like it to be. And when I jumped into coaching, I was lucky because I had some private clients and I had a really big corporate client. And then all of a sudden things got really kind of quiet because I'm potentially between contracts with that big client and my private client sort of fled the coop. And I was worried about it. And I was offered sort of a side hustle back in my old industry. Somebody approached me and said, would you like to take on a project? It was a freelance job. And I talked to you about it. And I said, I'm concerned about how I'm going to balance, the progress that I've made in my coaching business with being able to work in this very tumultuous and stressful production world. But I wanted to try to do it. So for me, I took on the production job so that I could sort of keep feeding my coaching world, keep things going with you, Jeff, and keep all of my systems paid for and, not feel like I was without income. So I don't think there's any harm in doing that. I think that every person needs to do what they think feels right for them. You should never have to feel poor or stressed. So I took on this job, this side hustle, and it is freelance, so it's ending soon, and then I'll be able to focus entirely on coaching again, but it gave me a nice little bump to keep going, and I can pick it up again if I need to. So, maybe this will be the time when I don't need to, and I'll just have tons of amazing clients.
Yeah, that's an important thing we've got to be honest with ourselves. And the good part is that that's afforded you the ability to keep doing exactly what you want to do in your business.
Exactly.
And you're still building it, but it frees up the anxiety of like, oh crap, I have some of these expenses, and it's things like working with me, all the other business systems, and that's an important aspect to what we do, and that's why I'm glad we were able to talk about some of that stuff because these are the realities of how do we create a long-term successful business. And you know what? Whether you have to do that again or consistently or whatever else for, anyone else's situation, it doesn't mean your coaching business isn't successful. It just means that, it's at the space where it's at and you're in the process of growing that. And there are going to be ebbs and flows in your business. And those are things important that it's smart to be able to understand that.
But you have to be wicked, organized and willing to work really hard to balance two things. And you can't let your coaching go because you're making additional money doing something else. You have to have boundaries and commit to upkeeping your coaching business.
And that's what I admire about you, is that's what I've seen in you, is even though as you've taken this on, you haven't lost any intention or consistency with your business. Or especially passion. You know what I mean? Like you're still, every conversation we've had, you've been 100, you haven't come, oh, this is exhausting me, or it's so hard to do my business now because of this. I haven't heard any of that. It's just, it's business as usual. And it's like, yeah, I'm doing what I need to do. And it's more effort and energy than I'd like to put into something else than my business, but it's necessary and I'm doing it. And that's the great mindset that you have. I love that. We can create some great things. Like, she's doing some great things, and I'm so glad you're willing to come on here and share.
Best coach ever, Jeff. You've been so helpful.
Thank you. So before we go, tell me, what do you feel has been the biggest value in our work together?
Biggest value,
or some of the value?
Well, so much value because you've sort of been there, done that. So it's inspiring to know that you've already done the thing that everybody who calls you is trying to do. And you're always calm, cool, and collected. And you really helped me set up my business from the ground up. So invaluable.